Budget brand heat pumps from China are facing 145% tariffs, copper components are up 25%, and circuit boards are increasing 30%. And these aren't just random numbers, they're the shocking reality of what's happening right now to HVAC prices due to Trump's 2025 tariffs. And according to industry reports, HVAC equipment prices have already risen 12% in the past year alone, with another 8 to 15% increase expected in the coming months. That translates to an additional $1,000 to $2,000 for even basic AC installations by mid-2025. So if you're planning to replace your system this year, these aren't numbers you can afford to ignore. You've probably noticed your contractor quoting higher prices lately, but it isn't just inflation this time, it's tariffs. You see, the 2025 Trump tariffs are hitting the HVAC industry in ways that many homeowners don't fully understand. And the thing about it is this isn't your typical price increase situation. What we're seeing is an intricate, multi-layered impact that's affecting everything from the smallest component to the final installed system in your home. And let me break down what's actually happening. You see, these tariffs aren't just slapping a tax on a finished air conditioner or heat pump that crosses the border. Instead, they're creating what industry experts call a complex web of price increases throughout the entire supply chain. And this is because every individual component that goes into making your HVAC system is potentially subject to its own separate tariff. And the really alarming part is how these tariffs stack on top of each component. Compressors, which are essentially at the heart of every air conditioning system, are getting hit particularly hard because Chinese-made compressors now face a 34% tariff, while compressors from Mexico get hit with a 25% duty instead. And even Japanese compressors aren't immune, with a 24% tariff applied to them. And electric motors, which are another critical component, are also feeling the squeeze. These motors power everything from your indoor blower motor to your outdoor fan, and they're facing similar tariff structures ranging between 34% for Chinese-made motors and 25% for those from Mexico. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Have you ever heard of double tariffing? Well, this is what happens when a component like a compressor made in China gets hit with a tariff, and then the assembled unit, let's say a heat pump put together in Mexico using that Chinese compressor, gets hit with another tariff when it enters the US. It's essentially taxation on top of taxation, and it's dramatically driving up costs. For example, imagine a heat pump that's assembled in Mexico but uses 40% Chinese-made parts. First, those Chinese parts get taxed before they even reach Mexico. Then, when the completed heat pump crosses into the US, it gets hit with another round of tariffs. This double taxation is why we're seeing such dramatic price increases on many HVAC systems. And this compounding effect isn't just making a small dent in your wallet, it's potentially adding thousands to the cost of a new system. For example, basic air conditioner installations that might have cost you $8,000 last year could easily hit $10,000 or more by the summer of 2025. And industry data is already showing the impact, with equipment prices jumping significantly in the past year alone. And experts are warning that we should expect another 8 to 15% increase in the very near future. And when you consider the fact that HVAC equipment is already one of the more expensive home improvements, these increases are hitting homeowners hard. And while you might have heard about a 90-day tariff pause that was announced recently, unfortunately that pause doesn't apply to China, which is where many critical HVAC components originate. And this exclusion means that the price increases we're seeing right now are likely to continue regardless of the temporary pause on other countries. You see, even the materials that make up the physical structure of your HVAC system are affected. Things like steel and aluminum tariffs directly increase the cost of heat exchangers, coils, and the sheet metal casings that house your equipment. And these material cost increases flow downstream to manufacturers, then to distributors, contractors, and finally to you, the homeowner. And the logistics of getting components has become more complicated as well, because when international suppliers face tariffs, it can lead to longer wait times for parts, potentially delaying your installation or repair. And right now, in some cases, contractors are reporting wait times that have doubled or even tripled compared to pre-tariff periods. But the good news is that these supply chain complications don't hit all brands equally. In fact, the battleground between HVAC manufacturers has never been more uneven, with some companies facing catastrophic price increases while others maintain relative stability. The question isn't just what system you'll buy, it's which manufacturer can shield you from the worst of these tariff impacts. And this is because of their relative locations. So let's break down how different manufacturers are facing this new tariff landscape. If you're shopping for a new system, this could literally save you thousands of dollars, because not all brands are created equal when it comes to tariff exposure, and their manufacturing strategies make all of the difference. For example, industry giants like Carrier Global and Trane Technologies have announced price increases of approximately 6% as of March 2025, with their total expected rise likely landing between 10 and 20%. And although this is significant, it's actually actually on the lower end compared to some of their competitors because their more diversified supply chains and levels of domestic manufacturing presence gives them a buffer against the full forces of these tariffs. Meanwhile, Mitsubishi Electric is in a tougher spot. Their ductless mini split systems are looking at price jumps of 15 to 25% or more. And why such a big difference? Well, it comes down to the greater dependence on foreign imported components. And the story gets even more complicated when you look at their specific product lines because Mitsubishi's M and P series ductless units made in Thailand face a 10% tariff, while those manufactured in Mexico get hit with a 25% tariff. And their SM series from Japan, well, that's a 24% tariff. But the real price shock is happening with budget-friendly brands. Brands under the Midea Group umbrella, including Mr. Cool, are staring down increases approaching a staggering 40%. And that's because these manufacturers are primarily based in China, and they are directly in the crosshairs of the highest tariff rates and making what was once the affordable option no longer the budget-friendly choice. Now, Lennox offers an interesting case study in how complex the situation has become because their signature and Elite and Mini Split series are actually assembled in the United States, which sounds promising. However, they still incur a 10% tariff on components, and their Merit series, or their budget line, which is made in Mexico, faces a 25% tariff. And as a result, Lennox announced approximately 10% price increases back in January with a total expected increase of 10 to 20%. Now, even Daikin Group's residential units, including familiar names like Goodman and Amana, aren't immune despite being assembled in Houston, Texas, because they're heavily exposed to component tariffs and have already announced a 10% price increase in January, with more expected. And here's what makes this unique so tricky for consumers. It's not just about where the final unit is assembled. The origin of key components, things like compressors, circuit boards, and motors, plays a crucial role in determining tariff impact. You see, a system might be American made on the label, but still rely heavily on imported parts that are now significantly more expensive. And Paloma Industries illustrates the story perfectly because their unitary systems are assembled in Arkansas and Georgia, but they are still exposed to component tariffs of 10%. However, their ductless Fujitsu systems made in China face 34% tariffs, while budget models from Mexico are hit with 25% tariffs. The predicted impact is somewhere between 10 to 15% increases for their unitary systems, as well as 10 to 20% for their budget models. And when it comes to Bosch, the makers of very popular heat pumps, with most units being manufactured in China, they are facing 34% tariffs, and they've already announced a 12% price increase as of April of 2025. And they're saying their ultimate price impacts could range from 15 to 35% for unitary systems and a whopping 20 to 40% for mini split systems. So while manufacturers are ramping up prices across the board, here's what's fascinating. Some homeowners are actually paying less for premium systems now than before these tariffs hits. And the secret lies in something called a combination of the Inflation Reduction Act as well as the tariffs that are levied on the budget systems, because with equipment costs soaring, homeowners are stuck between a rock and a hard place, because you can either replace your aging system now at premium prices, or you can gamble on squeezing a few more years out of your current unit with increasingly expensive repairs. And it's a dilemma that a lot of homeowners are facing right now. And what's happening as a result is homeowners are facing a fundamental shift in their decision making, because many homeowners are desperately clinging to their existing systems, hoping to postpone that big HVAC replacement purchase. And HVAC companies report a surge in repair requests compared to system replacements, which is a direct response to these unprecedented price hikes. But here's the problem. Repair parts themselves are caught in the same tariff trap, and the increased cost of components driven by tariffs as well as supply chain issues can make repairs a less viable option in the long run. And this is because those same tariff-afflicted components that drive up new system prices are simultaneously making repairs more expensive as well as harder to source. And what might have been a simple $400 or $500 repair last year could easily exceed $800 or $1,000 this year, with longer wait times thrown in as an unwelcome bonus. And some homeowners are adopting a wait-and-see approach, hoping these tariffs might eventually disappear, but historical evidence suggests that manufacturers rarely reduce prices after tariffs are removed, even if the cost of materials decreases, and this is according to multiple industry sources. That competitive pricing we saw in pre-2024 is likely to be gone for good, regardless of future policy changes, and this is because we're witnessing what industry insiders call a perfect storm of price escalation. Tariffs are just one part of the equation, because the mandated transition to A2L refrigerants is simultaneously forcing manufacturers to redesign systems as well as retool factories, and these simultaneous changes create a pricing environment that's unlikely to reverse even if tariffs eventually disappear. Now, for the counterintuitive part, this might actually be the best time to invest in a high-efficiency heat pump despite the higher sticker price, and you might be thinking, what a shocking suggestion coming from an HVAC contractor. So I should just buy now. But seriously, in an ironic turn of events, these tariffs are actually affecting the budget systems more heavily, which means this has brought them closer in price to the higher efficiency systems, making the jump for a premium system much smaller than it used to be. And the Inflation Reduction Act, in addition with many local regional credits, provides significant tax credits that can dramatically offset these tariff-induced price hikes, because homeowners can potentially receive up to a 30% rebate in tax credits for qualified energy efficient upgrades, and these credits can make premium systems surprisingly more accessible or even cheaper than the budget options in some circumstances. But timing matters just as much as what you buy, because if you ask any HVAC industry expert, they will tell you that there are very predictable price demand fluctuations throughout the year. Spring and fall are typically contractors' shoulder seasons, and these are always the best time to get the absolute best deal. And this is why purchasing during seasonal lulls, such as the spring or fall, when demand is typically lower, can provide opportunities for negotiation on installation costs, because that contractor who just quoted you $14,000 in July might offer the same system for $12,500 in October when their phone stops ringing. The general advice is making the call sooner rather than later is best, so you can establish the relationship and know what you're looking at. And another strategy gaining traction is exploring financing options, because contractors are becoming more comfortable offering financing given how expensive HVAC equipment has become. And with interest rates finally stabilizing and several manufacturers offering subsidized financing programs for literally 0%, this can make financing a high efficiency system that qualifies for maximum tax credits more feasible, and can also result in monthly payments comparable to what you might have paid for a budget system just a few years ago. Now, these government incentives won't last forever. The generous 30% tax credit will eventually expire, making today's high prices seem like bargains compared to what's coming. And this means that acting strategically now by combining tax credits with off-season timing, as well as potentially no or low interest subsidized financing, can create a rare opportunity within this challenging market. And I want to emphasize something important, and that's that even if these tariffs eventually get lifted, HVAC prices unfortunately aren't likely to fully return to their pre-tariff levels, because manufacturers often maintain price increases even after tariffs are removed. They've done it in the past, and isn't that convenient? And this is why comparing total cost of ownership is so critical, because that cheaper system might save you money today, but how much more will it cost to operate over the next 10 to 15 years? This is why high efficiency systems with better SEER ratings or HSPF ratings might cost more upfront, but they can at least deliver significant long-term savings through lower energy bills, as well as qualifying rebates. And another tip is finding a contractor who's flexible in their offerings, that has access to multiple brands right now is particularly key, as many brands have priced themselves out of being competitive due to their supply chains being based in China. So contractors who have adjusted their offerings accordingly will ensure that you get a quality system while reducing your exposure to these new tariffs. So we hope you found this content helpful, and if you did, make sure you smash that like button for the algorithm and consider subscribing to the channel to stay up to date on the latest in HVAC trends.